Here, I'll start it over. All right, go ahead. All right, Q&A time. Anybody got any questions?
How long have you been in your home?
3 years. Been there 3 years, and we have, I'd be lying to you if I told you we loved every minute of it. It's hard. It's very hard. It's very difficult. Because when you're teaching something like this, it's so new, but it's not new.
Right, first century, right.
But it's new to a lot of people. And so, you know, like I told you, I grew up around pastors. And the pastors that I know, who know me and feel confident, they can talk to me however they want. What are you doing, son? You got a gift. The world needs to hear it. You got this, you got that. You can do this, you can do that. You can be speaking to all these people and this, that. What are you doing just in your house? Are you scared? I've heard everything. Are you afraid? Leave this. You can leave it running if you want.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, okay, good. They ask like all these questions about like, you know, are you afraid that, you know, of your potential? Are you scared of this? Are you scared of that? Like, do you not want to quit your job? Do you know? And it's like, this is what God has given me. And so, you know, even within our body, you know, we've run across issues where they'll say, oh, we need to get a building. We need to get a building. We need to get a building. I'm like, why? Why do we get a building? Point to me in the scriptures where it shows that we need to get a building. And, you know, again, I got nothing against people who are doing it that way. If God has called them to that, great. But like for me, I have to do everything based on what I'm seeing here. And the short answer to your question is 3 years, and it hasn't been easy because we get a lot of questions about, you know, when are we going to do this and when are we going to do that? And then so I had to sit everybody down and preach to them. Y'all, this is, if you want a building, altar's not the place. Because, you know, there's 50 churches between here and probably wherever you drove from. So what we're trying to do is something a little different. And people have grown into that. And the group that we have now, it's a beautiful group. They understand it.
Do you find that it's more peaceful in your spirit to do home church than when you did the big?
Yes.
Because I do too. James, when did we start having Bible study in the basement? Oh, about 14.
I was having heard this existence.
So what? 15 years ago.
2015.
Yeah, so we went to the basement years ago. No, it was before that. Was it before that?
Actually, no, that is preacher first, and then he stopped.
Yeah. Okay. So we've been on and off in the
Okay, good.
prayer meeting, Bible study, laying out timelines on the wall,
Yep.
hanging out. And it's just, I noticed that when I was pulled away from the big church and all the programs, and Crystal, we gotta wear these colors, and it's just, ooh,
Yeah.
it's like we weren't learning anything. So you break open the word, tradition. It was just,
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and that's the thing, like, you're right, you know, I do feel like there's more peace in what we're doing. Not just with me, you know, with everyone else as well. And it's primarily because I feel like we can be ourselves.
I don't have to have perfect
I don't have to have a face. I don't have to put a face on for you to see a version of me that's not real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, when I was in every part of every church in the past, you know, if I was struggling with something, I didn't really know who to go to. Because on the one hand, I'm serving. So if I tell this person, they might judge me, call me this, call me that, tell me to sit down, tell me to do this, instead of love on me and be like, yo, I struggle with the same thing.
Right. I can't have a moment.
Yeah.
I can't have a season of heartache and brokenness in those organizations.
Yeah.
Just do the work, Crystal. Stop here, dog.
Yeah. So yeah, I do feel like, again, I'm not, this isn't like a
No.
bashing session, but me personally, I'll just tell you, I do feel like I have more peace than before, and I grew a lot at Chicago Tabernacle. I mean, the most that I've grown anywhere else. That pastor, that group of people, there was strength there, there was love there. So, I think that was a unicorn, so to speak. But the reality is, a lot of things have changed, even there. And I've found that when you're able to sit down with people and allow them to not only hear the word, but also providing an opportunity for them to ask questions about the word and to challenge the word. You create an environment for the Holy Spirit to then dwell among you and grow people. So, yeah.
I don't think you, should say bashing because it's biblical. If you really not overlook like house to house.
Yeah.
How many people his church is at such and such house?
Oh, let's go to it.
So
Look, you go. I'm listening.
it's definitely there.
What's her name? Priscilla?
Yeah. Priscilla, Aquila, Priscilla and Aquila.
I think only one.
Oh, I got you, bro. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
But since the pandemic, I've seen it and heard it. They come out of the water like yeah,
I'm
you
listening.
ain't
I'm listening.
bashing.
No, I'm not. Yeah, the thing is, I know that people will
People be offended though.
people won't like that. They're like, some people, not all, but like some people. Why is this not going anymore? Here, I'll get it for you. So here we go. Acts, don't have to turn. Acts 2:46, it says, and day by day, attending the temple together. Remember, the first part of Acts was when the church was being born. And so the Jews and their custom would go to the temple. But they would still have church service in homes. A lot of times they would go to the temple to preach. And then they would have the actual service in their homes. But listen, it says, temple together, breaking bread in their homes. They received their food with glad and generous hearts. Let me see if I can get it back. There we go. Look, you got it. Boom. Acts 2:42, and they devoted themselves to fellowship, apostles teaching, fellowship, breaking of bread, and the prayers. Every day in the temple. This is the early part of Acts. And from house to house, like you said, Willie. They did not cease teaching and preaching that the Christ is Jesus. What's next? From the temple to the house. Acts 12. So there's the latter part of Acts. An angel visited him there and miraculously guided Peter's escape. The amazed apostles ran to where? Mary's house to tell the Christians praying there. They were having a worship service. They were having a prayer service in the house. What happened? The astonished worshipers, listened while Peter asked them to tell others about this miracle. That is a church service. Acts 12:12. When Peter realized this, he went where? To the house of Mary. Many people were gathered in prayer. Acts 16:40. When they, Paul and Silas, had come out of prison, they went to whose house? Lydia's house, where they saw and encouraged the brothers, and then they left. How did I not shrink from declaring to you anything that was profitable in teaching you in public and from house to house? Man, that's good.
Okay, you're not the pastor.
I got more.
Wow.
Romans. Greet also the church where? In their house. Greet my beloved. I don't know that word. Who was the first convert to Christ in Asia? Colossians, one of my favorite books. Give my greetings to the brothers in Laodicea and to Nympha and the church in her house. The church of Asia send you greetings. Aquila and Priscilla, that's what you were saying. Together with the church in their house. You get the point. Now I could give you all the history of why they were meeting in the house. I can tell you why they moved from the house back to a building. You can do your own research. But it's largely due to the fact that a Roman emperor was converted to Christianity or liked the things that the Christians were doing. And so what did he say? He said, why are we persecuting Christians? Notice the first deviation from the house church was when the persecution stopped. That's a whole message in itself. Just let that sit for a little bit. But the Roman emperor said, why are we persecuting them? Let's stop persecuting them. In fact, let's give them taxation benefits. Let's stop taxing, them. Let's make them like these pagan temples that we have. Sun god worship and all these other things. Let's allow them to have worship just like we have. So when we became more like the pagans, that's the point at which we moved into the building. And so what happened? This emperor, along with some of his other people, started to attend these church services and what brought their pagan influences into the church. It was never supposed to leave the house. I don't believe. That's the way I read this text. I don't think that it was ever supposed to leave the house. And the persecution that we're about to face in America is going to be, I think, reminiscent of what we saw in the first and second centuries. And so it's going to go back to the house.
I'm not the only crazy.
No, you ain't crazy,
You
brother.
ain't crazy.
You ain't
You
crazy.
ain't crazy.
You ain't
You ain't
crazy.
Nobody like us.
Nobody listen to me though.
Nobody listen to me.
So,
Nobody listen to me.
so yeah, it's biblical to meet here.
We ain't going through
But there's some things that you got to know. And I'll just kind of speak from experience. Actually, I'm gonna be quiet. So I can. What else? What other questions?
Now, what you was about to just say? What was the last thing on the
Yeah, I mean, so from experience, I've noticed that you got to do it the right way.
Yeah, that's it.
You got to be dedicated to it. Kind of circling back to the point about the fruit, the seeds. It can't be like this half thing you do. You got to put as much energy into it as if you were the pastor's assistant of a megachurch. Whatever your role is, whatever you're going to be doing, if you're, because you still should have, outreaches. You should still go and feed the homeless. You should still go and, do things with orphans. You should still go and, reach out to non-believers in different ways. Like that's still a part of your calling, which is done on a different scale. So you still have to do it right. You got to put as much energy into this as you will put into anything else. You still got to go and bring people. Like one of the things you should do is like, all right, who are you bringing next week? Who are you bringing next week? Who are you bringing next week? Who are you going to try to bring next week? And when I say bring, I mean first you give them the gospel, but then you also say, hey, listen, a group of us, we meet, it's informal, we love each other, we eat, we kick it. What, 242, they voted themselves the breaking of bread. If you ain't breaking bread, that's why I always tell, I was like, hey, let's get
What we eat, right?
listen, if you ain't breaking bread, I'm not saying you ain't having a church service, I'm just saying more people will feel more comfortable in a setting where you're preaching the gospel if it's more like a family situation. And that's not to say we're doing that we're not deviating from the scriptures in order to make them feel comfortable. We're going back to the scriptures to make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And so, I guess what I'm saying is you got to do it right. Everybody has to be bought in. You got to be energized. You got to understand your people. If like, listen, if one weekend half the people out of town and other half of the people sick, let's reconvene in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We a house. We love each other. We get it. We'll be all right. Chill out. It means actually taking the word back after he preaches it, or it sounds like you might do some preaching too, maybe up there, I don't know. Like after a person has Bible study and preaches, like take the word back, study it, breathe it, live it, meditate on it, and then come back and have a conversation about it. Not every week this brother got to preach. Maybe you want to, I don't know if that's how y'all want to do it,
Not at all.
But maybe one week you preach it, you give them some supporting verses, they go back and research, they write down what the Lord is speaking to them, they come back and edify you.
Right.
When you go to the epistles in the Bible, why did everybody have a gift? Why did some got the gift of teaching, some of this, some of giving, some of this, some of tongues and interpreting tongues and all these? Why does God give each one of us a gift? To edify one another. So if he's the only one edifying people and nobody's edifying him, you ain't a church. You're not a church.
But that's what they want it to be is, I got all the gifts.
Yep.
Y'all come to me to, you know,
There you
I
go.
give out my gifts and y'all give out y'all money.
And guess what? That's enticing.
Right, yeah.
Hey,
I can be lazy.
yeah, because it's enticing on both sides. They can come in and be lazy. I can come in and be fresh.
Yeah.
I can be like, man, you know, everybody love me. That's how pride happens. I can speak a word, man. That sermon was fire. People was crying. You know a sermon good if people crying.
I'm good. Look at me.
Look how good I am. You
Hey,
missing
tell
the
me
point.
about that time you said you was about to preach and it was like a big crowd and you felt like pride creep in. It was like, you know, something like that. I think
Oh,
it's-
after. So that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was at Moody Bible
Oh,
Institute in Chicago. This is a big time.
Yeah, it's like the number one school in
Yeah,
the Midwest.
it's a big deal. You know. And I was there and I preached a message. It was called it was something like, it was called Take Your Place in the Kingdom. And I talked about how regardless of wherever you go, you need to be, this was probably 5 or 6 years ago. It's like wherever you go, you need to be like the woman at the well. As soon as she heard the gospel, she went back to her respective town and she preached, she told everybody. And I talked about how like I was at my workplace, and I worked at the time with one Muslim, one Catholic, one atheist, one agnostic, one Hindu, and there was something else mixed in there. A former Baptist or something like that, who had turned from the faith. And while I was there, I had various encounters with each of them. And I'm not going to say I converted everybody, so to speak, but at least one scenario in which every person requested at least prayer from me, an understanding of a text from me, like they were inquiring about the gospel in some way or the other. And so when I was preaching about that, it was a point in which I told a story when the my friend of mine, Muslim guy, his brother got electrocuted. And they didn't think he was going to live. So he was in a coma. And I was praying for him, and I said, brother, you know, I know you're Muslim, you know, but I'm telling you right now, I'm about to pray to Jesus. That's where I'm about to pray. And it wasn't like I'm paraphrasing, it wasn't insensitive. It was out of love, but he didn't care. His eyes were full of tears, like, please. So I prayed, and a couple days later, you know, I don't see him. The next day I see him at work, like 4 or 5 days later. He comes to me, he tells me to low down, he says, my brother came out of his coma, he's doing well now, he's going to live, everything's good. He was like, you know what he told me? He said, your prayers saved him. Your prayers. And I told that story, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. That's a lie. I'm embellishing a little bit. Some people was crying, not everybody. Some people. You know how you make a story sound better than what it was. So I say that, and all these people are crying, and then I leave there, and I'm like, man, I really preached that.
I killed it.
I killed that. And that was when I started to feel kind of pride, just like bubbling up a little bit. Like, yeah, you did kill it. It was Satan.
Yeah.
Of course.
It was
yeah.
Satan. Let's just call it what it was. And he just said, yeah, man, you know, you keep preaching like that, you can preach to thousands. You did it. It's like bubbling up. And I'm like, and I felt so off in my spirit. It was like, I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
But some people get that feeling and they lean in and it grows within them and they find, you know, they're like, well, I'm doing the work of the Lord, so this can't be bad. So I say all that to say, you know, I think when you're in a house church, it kind of builds fences around
A lot of that
what
stuff,
the
yeah.
devil can get a foothold on. How can he create pride in a person that's speaking to 10 people?
Right.
15
Or to your
people,
kids.
or to
Yeah.
your Our people, we got, how can it create
Hey,
pride?
no pride. Hey, I haven't
Where-
suffered from any pride this year.
Where you, amen, me either.
I
Come
know.
on. You preaching the same message or the same level quality, so to speak, of a message, and half the time, babies are crying, like for us, you know what I mean? Like in us, when you hear babies crying, and we got 8 or 9 of them,
We got more.
okay? So it's like,
Man,
how
right.
can you get pride when you get over preached by a baby? You know, how can you get pride when you preach your heart out to 4 or 5 people? It's just fences that are put in place.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not to say that every pastor struggles with pride, but it's something I struggle with. So, anywho, yeah, you got to do it right. Communion, I strongly suggest you do
Pizza?
communion differently.
You want to order some?
But yeah, that's it. I think that's all I got for today.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, go